All schools are now required to identify 5 to 10% of their pupils as gifted and talented. These will be the pupils who are the most able or have the potential to be the most able. They will include children from all walks of life and backgrounds.
There's a phrase that I love, the brains are on fire, and that's what we all come into teaching, to actually encourage children, whatever their abilities.
Before I found out that I was on the gifted and talented list, I had a friend, she was on the gifted and talented list, and she was incredibly smart, and I always wanted to be like her.
The way to let teachers take it on board is to think about it as challenge for all.
They've made sure that I know what my goal is, and I like being pushed to the limit, as I know it's going to benefit me.
What we talk about as good teaching or good learning for gifted and talented pupils is actually just good teaching and learning.
If you're going to be good at something, you're going to have to put in the effort. There's no shortcut, there's no easy way out.
Certainly aim for the top, absolutely critical, and it pays off. The very, very best schools look after all pupils, and that includes the most able.
This film looks at the impact of embedding this strategy on whole school attainment, the importance of an inclusive approach, and ways in which leaders and governors can support a gifted and talented programme. Local authorities and schools who have embedded a gifted and talented programme have had tremendous results.
Since we brought in G&T, our results have gone up. Our AA star pass rate has gone up. The overall A star to C pass rate has gone up. Our average point score has gone up.
The evidence indicates that by embedding gifted and talented, schools not only deliver effectively for the gifted and talented, but also create a slipstream effect that benefits all pupils.
This programme is not an elitist programme. It's a programme about making the best of your school. And the evidence is really very powerful to show that where a school focuses on a gifted and talented programme, you get raising standards generally, and you get massive enthusiasm amongst the children and amongst the teachers.
The experience of embedding the gifted and talented programme has created a very positive culture throughout the whole school. Pupils are very happy, they feel that they're achieving and there's huge progress within the school curriculum.
We've been very lucky at Hampton Gurney. The Gifted and Talented programme has been a part of this school for the past 7 or 8 years. It's something that we're very proud of, something that we take very seriously. We have a dedicated gifted and talented teacher. She's very well supported by the governing body and by the head teacher.
The type of classification provided for the gifted and talented benefits the whole school. Teachers find it a challenge, as well as myself. We find it a challenge sometimes to teach very smart children, but it's fun.
The expectation that all schools will identify and provide for their gifted and talented pupils may present a challenge for schools new to the programme.
The most important things are to plan for it well in advance, to make sure parents and students and people in the community are on board with it, to make sure that it's not a tag on to anything, but that it's actually integrated into other whole school improvement initiatives.
In order to raise achievement, we have to raise expectations. And I think Gifted and Talented does that because it's a holistic view of every child.
At Christchurch Primary, staff have focused on provision to enable them to identify a more representative gifted and talented cohort.
I think what's interesting is when you put in place provision for everyone, then you easily then begin to identify other children who may be good in those areas or may be good in other interesting areas.
Now the DFES want you to identify, and you have to do that, no doubt about it. But I think the way to get your school on board is to talk more about provision. We have done both hand in hand. Well, as soon as we got thinking about a G&T programme is, first of all, what do we provide for G&T already? What do we think we do? Where are the gaps? Where do we need to go? And at the same time, think about who are the G&T students? How do we identify them? Departmentally and whole school.
The departments get together and I ask them to nominate the top 10% for every subject. So each department will have their own department policy which helps them work out what's able, what's talented. Then when I come to decide on the whole school G&T cohort, I have next to me how many nominations they've got, what they got for their exam results, and then we decide on the top 10%, and this usually reflects the whole school.
Inclusion can be a challenge for schools, but it shouldn't prove a barrier to implementing a gifted and talented programme.
We've really had to look at underrepresentation on our cohorts, and we encourage all the coordinators who then send their list back to their departments to actually see that every group has been catered for, that it isn't an exclusive group.
Almost all our children speak English as a second language, but I think we've been very careful at making sure that we look at the child's cognitive ability as well as their ability at speaking English.
Senior managers play a strategic role in delivering and implementing an inclusive programme.
The most important thing that senior managers can do is to ensure that the G&T coordinator and the EAL coordinator can have collaboration, not demarcation of responsibility.
At St Marylebone, constant monitoring of who is in the gifted and talented cohort ensures no one is missed.
Every pupil is monitored through target setting, and then if there's certain pupils that are underachieving, so for example if certain pupils have got fantastic GCSE results but didn't get any teacher nominations, so it's my job to look out for those underachievers as well.
The gifted and talented coordinators is the catalyst within the school. They're the person who should be the kind of resident expert who's speaking on behalf of the gifted and talented pupils. So advising others on the kinds of provision that could be made and making sure that it actually happens in practice. The gifted and talented coordinator, I guess, has a really important role in making personalisation real for gifted and talented children.
By catering lessons to these more capable children, the children who are achieving at a slightly lower level also benefit from increased attention from their classroom teachers. So children of all abilities have benefited from our programme.
At Christchurch Primary, staff have found that independent learning resources, like these ones produced by London Gifted and Talented, not only stretch their gifted and talented pupils, but also help identify other pupils' potential.
We were finding children who were perhaps in lower ability groups really grasping concepts and becoming very animated and keeping up with what we would consider to be the higher ability groups. And that's what's very excited about the open-ended tasks.
One of the interesting things about identification, of course, is that once you've done it once, it's not done and dusted. Actually, children's skills and their talents and their abilities change over time. So we start getting this positive cycle of identifying able pupils, providing for them, which helps us to identify even more.
Go! Capital City Academy specialises in identifying sporting achievement. Personalisation is at the heart of how staff develop sporting talent.
The key is the student is at the centre of the development, not the education system, not the school results, not the national governing body's results, but actually the student who's in the middle of it all.
What we're doing with gifted and talented sports people in the school is not an end in itself, although for the young people in it, it's an end in itself. It's actually part of a much bigger strategy about trying to develop the talent in everybody. Leadership sits very well with talent in sport, so develop the leadership potential in everybody, and therefore it is part of an overall approach. Ibrahim Dahir sums a lot up about this school and the way the talented sports programme contributes. He came as a refugee from West Africa 4 or 5 years ago, was part of the team that won the National League and Cup Championship in England last year, earned the Man of the Tournament award, and now has a scholarship to do sport at Appalachian State University in North Carolina. Therefore, he's got the realistic possibility of entering professional basketball in the US.
I could see myself playing in the NBA for 15 years or so.
It's better than that because he's a wonderful young man who has also developed as a very fine leader, did huge work for us last year as one of our elite athletes, has cashed that in now in a gap year as a teaching assistant in the academy.
I'm working with 2 kids here. They're my priority, but I work with the whole class as a group. So I'm with them in all their lessons. So it really brings out leadership in you.
Provision for gifted and talented students at Eastleigh Community School doesn't stop at the school gate. These students regularly participate in events like this one organised by London Gifted and Talented, which focused on bringing gifted and talented pupils together to share in their learning.
It gives them an opportunity to look at experiences which are beyond the normal classroom experiences that they have, enables them to work together closely as a group, develop expertise in an area, and then we can extend upon that within the school curriculum.
What do you think inspired Charles Darwin to become a scientist?
I think it was his love of natural history. He got fascinated by beetles, and the more he looked at beetles, the more questions he had.
Many local authorities have also aided gifted and talented development by creating partnerships between neighbouring schools.
I think one of the most successful things that we've tried to work on is to look at how we cluster our primary schools in a geographical region around a school that was an early adopter, that has good practice, has had some successes with pupils and parents and made good relationships and partnerships outside. And actually this cluster model provides then for not just information and dissemination about practices, but also about delivery, about providing programs. So we can get schools in a cluster to run a maths advanced skills centre, for example. Schools then only have to find a small amount of funding for their proportion of that particular development.
Eastleigh has further strengthened links with the community by appointing a dedicated gifted and talented governor.
I think governors are key to gifted and talented development. They play a key role in supporting students, getting involved with their day-to-day learning, and also in providing mentoring for them.
I think gifted and talented is extremely useful. It really helps motivate students, helps inspire students, the healthy competition as well, just to give them something to aim and achieve. That's something fun as well. It's not all about, being in the books.
Governors can support their school by getting informed about gifted and talented and keeping it on the school improvement agenda.
At governor meetings, all the time when they're talking about standards, they're talking about attainment, does that include the more able? And does this affect the more able? And how does this affect the more able?
One of the most important things for a school to remember is that gifted and talented provision is not something separate. It's part of the school being a good school. And as new trends come through in education, at the moment, the Every Child Matters agenda, they're all very important agendas for all children, including the gifted and talented.
If we take, for example, our Key Stage 3 pupils that got an average of 7 or 6.7, in the last 3 years, our value added for those top pupils has been as big as the value added for the weaker pupils. So they're now adding an extra GCSE than perhaps they should have got. They're having more average points to their average point score than they should have got. Now, this result has come out for a whole range of reasons, but one of them, I think, will be the provision and identification and stretch given to those pupils by focusing on G&T as a whole school initiative.
We should be doing G&T. We must do G&T. We need to do G&T. These children are a national resource.
I know that I'm working very hard in this and that I should continue to work hard and that I can achieve higher.
It has to be a whole school thing, and I think you really want to free teachers up to actually develop their skills and develop the skills of the children.
Work hard, and if you've got dreams, try and fulfill them, because that's the only way you're going to get there.
I think focusing on G&T has had a significant impact on raising standards of attainment and improving value-added scores.
And seeing as every single school identifies pupils with SEN or EAL, the question is, why aren't you doing it? Not why don't you do it? Why aren't you already? You should be.